Good day. I wasn't completely happy with how the original Huskarl video went, like the base video on just the Huskarl, so I decided that I would combine everything and set up a PowerPoint and just go through all of the class, all of its features, give some examples of runes, just all of that, get it out of the way, nice and simple. So this is just a full overview of the Huskarl, which, as if you've seen the previous videos, is a very reactionary type class that is very fighter-esque in its nature and focuses on defending and supporting its allies and teammates. So getting straight into it, the hit points and proficiencies has a standard D10 hit dice, so it starts off with 10 hit points plus Constitution modifier. Proficient with medium and heavy armor, shields, and both martial and simple weapons. I'm thinking about maybe changing that to melee martial and simple weapons with maybe a handful of thrown weapons thrown in. I'm not terribly sure yet. It has proficiency with wisdom and constitution saving throws, and 2 skills from the list of athletics, insight, intimidation, perception, history, and survival. For starting equipment, it's very straightforward. It's either chainmail or hide armor and a simple melee weapon, a martial weapon and a shield, 2 simple melee weapons or a short sword and a dagger, and a Dungeoneer's pack or an Explorer's pack. And then moving on to their base features, they get a fighting style at level 1, defensive counter at level 1, second win at level 2, extra reaction at level 5, 11, and 20, protector at level 6 and 12, and shield combat at level 9 and 13. So for fighting style, the Huskarl has 3 to choose from: defense, protection, and dueling. They were chosen because of how they interact with, how the Huskarl is meant to play. Defense gives you an extra armor extra AC rather, while wearing armor, which ties into how they play rather well since they are meant to be a very defensive type entity. Whereas protection is like, it's helping defend your allies more, as well as giving, chance to use reactions for something else. And then dueling is just there because technical rules allows you to have it with a shield and a melee weapon in one hand, so that's the thing. Defensive counter: when a creature misses you with a melee attack, you can use reaction to make a melee attack against that creature. This will be usable with the extra reactions simply because it's a Huskarl class feature. It allows them to, immediately respond to a threat that attempts to take advantage of the situation. Second wind is ripped straight from the fighter, because I felt that it suited it really well, as it was, another up-in-your-face melee type situation. Well, not always melee or melee, depending on how you want to pronounce it, but it's very up-in-your-face, so having that small heal that you can get is really helpful. Extra reaction is just like, getting extra attacks, except it's a reaction that you can take and can only be used for attacks of opportunity and Huskarl class features, which tend to be in the form of attacks or defending allies. I might also make it so that the defending fighting style, the one where you can impose disadvantage on attack against a friendly creature, is also usable through this. I'm not sure yet. And then Protector is from levels 6 and 12. While you're wearing a shield, a creature within 5 feet of you has to make a dexterity. When a creature within 5 feet of you, has to make a dexterity saving throw that you don't have to perform. That's very key there. You can use a reaction to give that creature advantage on the saving throw, and if they fail, you take half the damage that they would. And then at 12th level, if you're within 5 feet of a creature, that has to make a dexterity saving throw against a line spell, so like, one of the lightning spells, I don't remember which one. It's my bad. You can make a strength check to attempt to push them out of the way, so it's essentially a shove. However, your strength check must succeed the spell save DC, and on a success, the creature that you pushed has to make a strength saving throw or be knocked prone, and the DC for that is 8 plus your strength modifier. Shield combat is from level 9s and 13. When you get it, you are considered proficient with using your shield as a weapon, and the damage for it is a 1d6 bludgeoning. And then beginning at 13th level, you can use your shield to perform a bonus action, which will either throw up a taunt or do bash. The bash is taken straight from I think it's Shield Master feat. It felt very fitting to put it in there, and the taunt was just a little interesting quirk that I felt like adding in. I'm not totally sure how balanced it'll be, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Huskarl archetypes, however you want to pronounce it. There are two archetypes, Rune Lord and Virgil. As is the usual, they're available from 3rd level. The Rune Lord is a very support type role where it focuses more around temporary enchantments and supporting allies or even boosting their own capabilities, whereas the Virgil is very rudimentary and bodyguard. They are there to take the hits, they are there to absorb damage. And they get the additional features at 7th level, 10th level, 15th level, and 18th level. Going into the Rune Lord first, the Rune Lord's features are fairly straightforward for the most part. They have the Combat Enchanter trait, the Runemaker trait, Iron Focus, Runic Branding, Dual Activation, and Permanent Activation. Combat Enchanter, it gives them 2 cantrips from the Sorcerer spell list. However, their spellcasting ability is Wisdom. I chose Wisdom because it somewhat makes a little bit more sense, because they're calling on previous combat experience, so it's not like focused, honed in through research and memorizing, so it's not intelligence. And it's not charisma because it's going off of their own willpower and battlefield knowledge. So they get 2 cantrips from the Sorcerer spell list, and an additional cantrip at 10th level. I chose Sorcerer because it limited the pool a little bit more than other classes, and Druid kind of felt a little bit out there. They also use the spellcasting ability for anything that involves Runic Enchanting, which is part of the Combat Enchanter. So Runic Enchanting allows the player to install a number of dormant runes onto a number of different objects. I believe it's limited to 1 rune on each object, as defined by their Huskarl level. For example, in the table you can see that at 3rd level they know 3 runes, they can install 4 dormant runes, and they have 4 runic points. The runes can be activated later as an action or reaction, as part of the Runic Enchanting feature, of course. Activating them costs runic points. After the activation is done, you don't get anything back. There are ways to recover runic points, however. It's treated as a concentration spell, except you can have multiple up at once, simply because it allows the enchanting aspect to be a little bit more interesting. That might become overpowered. I may need to change that. I'm not sure. We're just going with it for now. The duration of each rune depends, varying on the rune, and runic points are regained during a long and short rest. So, as I said earlier, you know 3 runes of your choice from a predefined list at 1st level, and whenever you gain a level in the class, you can replace one of the runes you know with another one of your choice. Runemaker isn't part of Runic Enchanting, but I figured I should include it in here anyway. It basically allows them to get proficiency in an artisan tool from the list, just to tie in with the whole idea of their carving or painting or embroidering in the different runic symbols into each piece. The runes themselves are split up into 5 categories, and each category can be overloaded. To overload a rune, you typically have to spend an additional rune point in order to activate it. So say that something cost 2 runic points, you'd pay 3 and it would overload the rune, and it has various effects. So the 5 classifications are mundane, elemental, enhancement, defensive, and offensive. Mundane are just like your standard +1s, +2s, +3s. They only get access to 2 different ones, which as you get higher in levels, like after level 7, you can put 2 points into it to give +2 to say AC if it's armament, or attack rolls and damage if it's strike. And then after level 14, you can put 3 in to get a +3 to AC or to attack rolls and damage. Overloading runes are a little bit interesting because each rune type has a different effect when it's overloaded. For example, the mundane rune, when it is overloaded upon activation, as in upon the overloaded rune's activation, it will deal 1d4 force damage to the holder / the person that it's branded on. I will get onto that later. And they must succeed a wisdom saving throw, based on your spell save DC, obviously, or have their AC or attack rolls, not their damage though, that's very important, reduced by your maximum mundane value for the duration. So say that you're branded an opponent with a strike, and you're like level 8, and you sink 3 points into it, their attack rolls are reduced by 2 for the duration, and the duration is up to 10 minutes. I'm thinking about changing the duration of overloaded runes, but we'll get to that later. Elemental, very straightforward. They add elemental damage, like Flame, Fire, and Inferno all add fire damage in different amounts. Each are available at different levels and for different point values. There's also Spark, Shock, and Lightning, and Chill, Freeze, and Blizzard. A overloaded elemental rune will deal 3d8 of its elemental type to the person who is, either branded or wielding or wearing the activated piece. Elemental runes, they can be applied to either weapons or armor, however. If they're applied to armor, they... what do they do again? I believe they grant resistance to that element type. Whereas, if applied to a weapon, they can be applied for half value to deal a single copy of the dice per round. So say that you have 3 attacks a round and you have a flame rune on and it's half activated, so it's only being 1 point for activation instead of 2. It'll deal 1d6 fire damage on 1 attack. However, if they spent the full 2 points of activation, it would do 1d6 fire damage every attack. Enhancement runes are probably the most interesting. I would just go over a single example and what overloading them does. A overloaded enhancement rune would deal 2d6 psychic damage, and for the rest of what would have been the rune's duration, if you roll a natural 20, so if you critical, on an attack using a Rune Lord spell or a concentration check to maintain enchantments, or any wisdom checks, I should probably change that to wisdom saving throws, you regain 2 runic points. The runes durations for enhancements tend to be 15 minutes or over, but they will only grant, most runes last up to 5 minutes for enhancement runes. However, runes with a duration of 15 minutes or over will only grant recovery for the next 10 minutes. That was a little bit of attempting to balance. So a very quick example for the enhancement runes is Quicken, which is activated for 3 points. It increases the user's dexterity score by 2 to a maximum of 22, and increases movement by 10 feet. It's very straightforward. It may be worth a little bit too little, but oh well. Then moving on, we have defensive runes, which grant resistance to various damage types, such as, bludgeoning, piercing, etc., etc. Non-magical damage for high-level runes as well. When a defensive rune is overloaded, it requires double its activation cost to overload it, unlike the others, which is only a single point more. And then the user or the target of the overloaded rune must make a wisdom saving throw, or take an additional 1d6 damage whenever they are damaged by the type of damage the rune was resistant to, but that only lasts for the next 3 turns. And defensive runes can only be active for 2 minutes. So, for example, we'll take the first one in the list, Harden, which is activated for 1 point, and it gives resistance to non-magical slashing damage. It gets more interesting as you go further through. For example, Muffle is also worth 1 point, and it gives resistance to thunder damage. Then moving on to offensive runes, a overloaded offensive rune will create an explosion with a 10-foot radius around it. The creature holding the rune and those in the radius have to make a dexterity saving throw, or take 46 fire damage from the explosion. Offensive runes can only be activated for a maximum of 5 minutes, and a quick example of that is Predict, which is 2 points, which gives you advantage on your first weapon attack during the round, because you're trying to, predict where the opponent is moving, and you lash out as you expect to. Iron Focus, at level 7, it gives advantage on concentration checks, and adds double the proficiency to concentration checks while maintaining focus on enchantments. Wait, no, that are to maintain focus on enchantments instead of normal proficiency bonus. This is really just to help them with holding onto the enchantments and all that. Runic Branding, at 10th level, they can use a bonus action to draw a rune that they know in the air, and then as an action or reaction, they can make a ranged spell attack with it at a target within 40 feet of them using the rune. If they hit, the target suffers 2d4 psychic damage and must succeed a wisdom saving throw. If they fail, then they are marked with a dormant rune, which cannot be activated until the start of the play's next turn. It basically allows them to use the runes for a more offensive approach, as well as debuffing opponents. It also makes the Overload feature a little bit more interesting and colourful to use. Level 15 gives access to dual activation, which basically just means whenever an action or reaction is used to activate a dormant rune, you can immediately activate a second dormant rune for half its normal cost. However, if you're going to overload the rune, you still have to pay its full cost plus 1, just so you know. Then finally, at level 18, they have permanent activation, which allows them to basically permanently activate specific runes. If they're permanently activated, then certain effects will only be able to be active for X amount of time. Otherwise, things would get out of hand really quickly. Say if something applied haste or something, it would get really out of hand quickly. There can be a maximum of 4 permanently activated enchantments. Each time you use a permanent activation, it reduces your maximum number of dormant runes by 2, simply because it's going to take those 2 dormant runes to constantly maintain the enchant. During a long or short rest, you or they, depending on how you want to look at it, can deactivate the enchantment, which is done by performing a wisdom check against their own spell save DC. If they successfully deactivate the item, it immediately restores 4 runic points to them, and they regain an extra dormant rune. However, the now mundane piece of equipment is still considered to have a dormant rune etched into it, but it can now be removed as seen fit. Moving on to the Verger, so the bodyguard, the real bastion and tower of strength. The Verger has very straightforward features: bodyguard, multi-attack defense, reaction surge, give and receive, shield combat master, and tower of defense. Bodyguard allows the Verger to select a creature near 10 feet of them and basically make them their charge, so the person that they're meant to be protecting. Or object. Well, no, not object, because it has to be a creature. They do that using a bonus action. While they're within 5 feet of their charge, if a creature makes a melee attack against them, as in against the charge, not against the Verger, the attack has disadvantage. And after level 10, if the attack misses, then the Verger can use a reaction to make an attack against the target. Well, attack against the attacking creature, rather. Multi-attack defense is taken straight from one of the ranger features for the hunter, simply because I really liked it and I felt like it worked quite well. When a creature manages to hit you with an attack, you gain a +4 bonus to AC on all subsequent attacks from that creature for the rest of the turn. It's very straightforward. It's very nice. I am quite a fan of it. It doesn't say that it takes a reaction, so I'm hoping it doesn't, but if it does, then oh well, I may need to change that. Then Reaction Surge, which is given access to at level 10. Once per long or short rest, they can double the number of reactions they take a turn, so it's essentially an action surge, except it's being used as a reaction. Except they need to use an action to activate the extra reaction surge, I believe. Either way, as with the extra reaction feature, this bonus can only be used for attacks of opportunity and the Huskarl class features. So if... Well, I guess that wouldn't really work because you'd have to be a Rune Lord for that. But say that you're, in a area where lots of enemies are doing lots of area effect things, this would really help with the Protector, as well as a variety of other things. Next up is Give and Receive, which is also at level 10. I don't think it is, maybe? I don't know. I've got it written down as level 10, so we'll just assume that it's level 10 for now. It's probably not. When a creature hits you with a melee attack, you can use a reaction to make an attack against the creature, so it's basically just giving them parry as well as, I think it was, riposte from the maneuvers, yeah. And then if a creature within 5 feet of you makes a ranged attack against another creature, you can use a reaction to make an attack against the creature. Then Shield Combat Master is from level 15. It essentially just improves some of the things that you can do with the Shield Combat feature. For example, when you make an attack as a reaction, you can attempt to bash instead using the bashing rules from the Shield Combat feature. It also increases the damage of the shield to 1d8 bludgeoning instead of 1d6. And then Tower of Defense basically just gives it so if you have a taunt up and a creature succeeds the saving throw against it, you can use a reaction to make 2 attacks against the target. However, one of the attacks has to be with your shield, and the other one is with your weapon. That's really all I have to say. I might have a link to a PDF or something down in the description. Knowing me, I probably won't, but oh well, I'll try to get that out as soon as possible, as well as a full spell list for the Rune Lord. Well, not spell list, rune list for the Rune Lord. Hope you enjoyed. Any feedback is welcome, especially if it's negative. I really want to improve. So, if you liked it, leave a thumbs up, maybe leave a comment, even subscribe if you want to. It's really up to you. And I might see you next time.